Welcome back, students of the first year BA batch. So before we begin with this chapter, this is the chapter that we will be doing. And before we begin, let me just read out the name of the chapter, on saying please. Okay, please keep your textbooks open so that you are on the same page as I am and you get to know what I am reading from this text. Okay, so before I get into this chapter, the author of this chapter, his name is A.G. Gardner. Okay, A.G. Gardner. He is a very celebrated writer. He is known to be writing delightful, uh, humorous and thought-provoking, sensible and thought-provoking stories for the masses to read. He started out his journey as a journalist. Okay, so now that we are reading one of his chapters, let us see what kind of a writer he is, which I bet he's very good. On saying please is about how much manners, our way of behaving, manners, courtesy matters nowadays, and how much it's helpful in our society, and how we cannot do without it, or what will happen if the world functions without manners. Okay, so we'll just start on. Okay. The young liftman in a city office who threw a passenger out of his lift the other morning was fined for the offense was undoubtedly in the wrong. It was a question of please. The complainant entering the lift said, "Top." The liftman demanded, "Top, please." And this concession being refused, he not only declined to comply with the instruction, but hurdled the passenger out of the lift. So here you can see a situation where the liftman, a person who is in the lift and presses the buttons for passengers to go whichever floor they want to, he just said that the passenger did not say please. He just came in. The passenger just came in and said top, like it's his father's property and he can just say whatever he wants to. So the liftman said, returned back by saying, "Top, please. Don't just say top. Speak to me with respect." So that didn't happen. So what did he do to the passenger? He just threw him out of the lift. Okay. This of course was carrying a comment on manners too far. So anyone would say that he's doing too much just because the person didn't say top please, the liftman threw him out, is too much. Okay, discourtesy is not a legal offense, and it does not excuse assault and battery. So discourtesy, bad manners is not a legal offense. You don't see in any rule, constitutional rule of the country, of any country, saying that if you don't say please or if you don't be a little bit well mannered, you're going to be in jail. That never happens. Okay. If a burglar breaks into my house and I knock him down, the law will quit me. And if I am physically assaulted, it will permit me to retaliate with reasonable violence. So now the author is trying to say that if a thief comes in my house and if I try to retaliate, if I knock him down, the law will protect me, saying that, okay, the thief came in your house and that's okay, you should have hit him. Good. Okay, the law will protect him. Okay, so physically assaulted, it will permit me to retaliate with reasonable violence, because you may be attacked by the thief, so why don't you hit the thief as well, to save yourself. It does this because the burglar and my assailant have broken quite definite commands of the law, but no legal system could attempt to legislate against bad manners or could sanction the use of violence against something which it does not itself recognize as a legally punishable offense. Now, once again, the author is trying to say that bad manners is not a punishable offense. Okay? And whatever our sympathy with the liftman, we must admit that the law is reasonable. It would never do if we were at liberty to box people's ears because we did not like their behavior or the tone of their voice or the scowl on their faces. Our fists would never be idle. So, students, this way, our hands, our fists would never be idle. We'd always be punching somebody because they were rude to us. But that doesn't happen. But this is what would have happened if if we would have been mannerless the whole time, or if the law said that okay, fine, it's okay to just hit somebody. Okay, our fits would never be idle, and the gutters of the city would run with blood all day. So of course, the gutters of the city would run with blood all day if there was this constant fighting going on. Somebody's boxing someone, somebody doesn't like the tone of someone's voice, someone doesn't like the scowl on somebody. To make a face, to be angry, scowl. Okay, someone doesn't like that. So this the gutters of the city would run with blood. There would be so much of bloodshed. I may be as uncivil as I may please, and the law will protect me against violent retaliation. I may be haughty or boorish. Haughty means to think as oneself as above the others. Okay, I am the one, I am the supreme. Okay, others are nothing in front of me. Boorish means rude, and there is no penalty to pay except the penalty of being written down as an ill-mannered fellow. So the law is not going to say that you're punished because you think too much of yourself and you're rude. You're going to go in jail. No, that's never going to happen. But people in society will definitely say this man is bad. Okay? The law does not compel me to say please or to attune my voice to other people's sensibilities any more than it says that I shall not wax my mustache or dye my hair or wear my ringlets down my back. So there is no hard and fast rule that you have to say please. Just as there is no hard and fast rule that you have to shave, you have to wax, you have to wear your outfits this way or that way. So just as that, there is no way of saying. The law doesn't say that you have to say please. Okay, it's your wish. Say it if you want to. Okay. It does not recognize the laceration of my feelings as a case of compensation. Of our feelings as a case of compensation. Laceration over here means wounds. Okay, like wounds. Okay, so it does not recognize the hurt that it causes to our feelings when someone else is rude. The law does not recognize that. There is no allowance for moral and intellectual damages in these matters. Okay, nobody says that okay, you will get some financial allowance, or you will get some emotional allowance now that you're hurt or somebody was being rude to you. That never happens with the law. Okay, the law is reasonable. They only look for the right and the wrong. They don't see that your emotions were hurt. So emotions do not come under the law. Okay, and so do manners. They also don't come under the law. This does not mean that the damages are negligible. So just because the law does not accept discourtesy as a major damage, does not mean that it is not a damage. You cannot neglect, or you cannot let go, or you cannot just avoid the damages. Okay, there are still certain damages, major damages. Okay, if somebody is being ill-mannered, or people around you are ill-mannered, it is probably that the liftman was much more acutely hurt by what he regarded as a slur upon his social standing than he would have been if he had a kick on his shins, for which he would have gotten legal redress. The pain of a kick on the shins soon passes, but the pain of a wound to our self-respect or our vanity may poison a whole day. So the author is trying to say that maybe it is the liftman who felt hurt that the person did not speak to him in a proper manner because of him being just a regular liftman who doesn't have much of a social standing. Okay, he is not a big, the lift man is not a big man in the society. He's just a lift man. And so that's why he felt like his self-respect was really hurt in the process. I can imagine the liftman denied the relief of throwing the author of his wound out of the lift, brooding over the insult by the hour, just feeling bad that someone insulted you, and visiting it on his wife in the evening as the only way of restoring his equilibrium. So he's trying to get equal. He's trying to, displace his anger on his wife. So he'll just go home and get angry at his wife. That's it. For there are few things more catching than bad temper and bad manners. When Sir Anthony Absolute Captain bullied means to tease or be rude, tease somebody. Ragging is also bullying. Bullied Captain Absolute. The latter went out and bullied his man, Fag, whereupon Fag went downstairs and kicked the page boy. Probably the man who said top to the lift man was really only getting back on his employer who had not said good morning to him because he himself had been henpecked at breakfast by his wife, sorry for the disturbance, to whom the cook had been insolent because the housemaid had answered her back. So you can see over here, students, that this is just a cycle of ill manners and how it travels and affects people. So he's trying to say that maybe the person who did not say top please, the passenger who did not say top please to the liftman, he himself had been spoken to, or never got a good morning from his employer because the employer was nagged by or henpecked by his wife. The wife was shouting at him, or maybe the wife was treated in a bad way by the housemaid, So this is a cycle of bad manners. Okay, it travels. Okay, we infect the world with our ill manners. Okay, we kind of infect the world with our ill manners. Bad manners probably do more poison the stream of the general life than all the crimes in the calendar. So he feels that life, through the ages and stages, more and more of ill manners, the more life is poisoned. Okay. For one wife who gets a black eye from an otherwise good-natured husband, there are 100 who live a life of martyrdom under the shadow of a Morse temper. So here he's trying to say that there's a wife who gets beaten up or punched by the husband, but outside the husband is known to be a very nice man. He's known to be a very courteous man, but he's when the person dies, he's known as oh, he was such a nice man. But only his wife knew that he was a horrible man. He had a bad temper. He was a very angry and violent man. So this is what he's trying to say. Okay? But all the same, the law cannot become the guardian of our private manners. No decalogue could cover the vast area of offences, and no court could administer a law which governed our social activities. Our speech means the way we talk, the tilt of our eyebrows, and all other moods and manners. So once again, he's trying to say that the law cannot govern or look after, monitor our manners, the way we look at each other, the looks we give to each other, the way we speak. They cannot govern all of this. Okay. But though we are bound to endorse the verdict against the liftman, most people will have a certain sympathy with him. While it is true that there is no law that compels us to say please or makes it compulsory, compel means to make it compulsory, compels us to say please, there is a social practice much older and much more sacred than any law which enjoins us to be civil. So you must have known that your ancestors have taught you to be well mannered, to have certain kind of manners to people around us. Okay, this is what he's talking about. Our, the people around us have taught us certain manners. And the first requirement of civility is that we should acknowledge a service. So, to be civil, okay, to live in society and be a well-mannered, a civil person is to acknowledge the people who do things for you. When a person opens a door for you, say thank you. Don't just walk off, okay? Don't be so ill-mannered. And the first requirement, yes, so just as I said, please and thank you are the small change that with which we pay our way as social beings. So please and thank you, just as we are taught as little children that say please, say thank you, say sorry. So these are kind of manners that are instilled on us as children as well. And as adults, we are told to carry them on, which is why this is the only way of being civil, of being pleasant to other people around us. Okay. So these are the small changes that can be made when somebody, when something, you want to change the way society functions. If it's way too rude for you, just use these two words, simply say thank you or please, the day goes brighter. They are the little courtesies by which we keep the machine of life oiled and running sweetly. So, life is like an engine, he's trying to say. And you're trying to keep when you try to keep your life running, you can't keep it running this way with rudeness and impolite people. You have to be polite, you have to have manners. Only then the journey will be sweet and everything will be running in a very smooth manner. Okay? They put our intercourse upon the basis of a friendly cooperation and easy give and take, instead of on the basis of superiors dictating to inferiors. So, instead of superiors, your boss being very rude to you, a boss can just be nice to their employers or their inferiors or their juniors, or the superiors, being nice, the seniors being nice to the juniors. It would be way better than just having someone, dictating, having this dictatorship upon people that you do this and you do that. It would be better if, can you please do this or can you please do that? Okay, that way. It is a very vulgar mind. Vulgar means dirty. Vulgar mind that would wish to command wherever he can, have the service for asking, and have it with a willingness and good feeling instead of resentment. I mean, you will get something, but you want to command, like, give me this, give me something. That's not how you talk to, say, for example, a shopkeeper. Can I please have so and so? The shopkeeper will give you, no matter, even if you are ill-mannered, if you go in and command the person that, give me this, the person will still give it, but they'll have a kind of hatred for you. They'll have a kind of hatred for you. Okay? They'll give it to you, but they won't give it with love. They'll give it with hate. So, resentment is to give it with hate. I should like to feature in this connection, my friend, the polite conductor. By this discriminating title, I do not intend to suggest a rebuke to conductors generally. On the contrary, I am disposed to think that there are few classes of men who come through the ordeal or bad experience of a very trying calling better than bus conductors do. Here and there you will meet an unpleasant specimen who regards the passengers as his natural enemies, as creatures whose chief purpose on the bus is to cheat him, and he can only be kept reasonably honest by a loud voice and an aggressive manner. Have you seen bus conductors? Do you think they are very subtle and they are very sweet and polite? No, they are very harsh in a way, because they feel that people around them may try to fool them, trick them, and oh, I don't have the ticket today, I don't have the money today, can you please give me a free ticket? So that is what they don't want that. Okay, So this is why he's trying to say that bus conductors are generally a little rude, okay, because they don't want people tricking them. But this type is rare. So he's talking about one conductor who's not like the other conductors, rarer than it used to be. I fancy the public owes much to the Underground Railway Company, which also runs the buses, for insisting on a certain standard of civility in its servants and taking care that that standard is observed. So the underground railway company says that its servants, its employers must talk and speak and act with respect. Okay. In doing this, it not only makes things pleasant for the traveling public, but performs an important social service. So being good is also being kind, and good to people is also a kind of social service. Okay. It is not therefore with any feeling of unfriendliness to conductors as a class that I pay a tribute to a particular member of that class. I first became conscious of his existence one day when I jumped onto a bus and found that I had left my home without any money in my pocket. Everyone has had the experience and knows the feeling, the mixed feeling which the discovery arouses. You are annoyed because you look like a fool at the best, and you knave at the worst. You would not be at all surprised if the conductor eyed you coldly, means stare at you in a horrible manner, and much to say, yes, I know the stale old trick. Now then, off you get. And even if the conductor is a good fellow and lets you down easily, you are faced with the necessity of going back to the inconvenience, perhaps of missing your train or your engagement. So he's trying to say that he once forgot some money while he was coming from his home. He had already got on the bus and he saw that he has no money. And you know how it's like when you have no money and you're in the bus. You know what will happen? The conductor may get angry and might tell you to get off. Two, the conductor may be good but will still tell you that get off. Okay, so just go, but you won't reach your place of engagement. You may not reach your work. You may not reach to somewhere that you are supposed to go. Okay. Having searched my pockets in vain for stray coppers and having found I was utterly penniless, I told the conductor with an honest face, as I could assume, that I couldn't pay the fare and must go back for money. Oh, you needn't get off. That's all right, he said. All right, said I, but I haven't a copper on me. Oh, I'll book you through, he replied. Where do you want to go? And he handed me his bundle of tickets with the air of a man who was prepared to give me a ticket for any way from the bank to Hong Kong. So he's just trying to say that this particular conductor, who is the rarest of the rare, did not tell him to get off or just get down and no. He said that, okay, fine, you don't have the money, it's okay. I'll let you go this time. Okay. I said it was very kind of him and told him that I wanted to go and told him where I wanted to go. And as he gave me the ticket, I said, but where shall I send the fare? Oh, you'll see me someday, all right, he said cheerfully as he returned to go. And then, luckily, my fingers still wandering in the corners of my pockets lighted on a shilling and the account was squared. So finally he did get some money in his pocket and he gave it to the person. But can you see how the conductor was not rude or didn't tell the person that get down and okay fine now like get down. No, he said that you will meet me someday, maybe then you can give me the amount and it's okay. And he was cheerful, he was happy. Okay. But the fact did not lessen the glow of pleasure which so good natured an action had given me. So this man, the conductor, was so good natured. He had such good manners in him that it pleased the author. Okay, it made the author feel so good. A few days after, my most sensitive toe was trampled on rather heavily as I sat reading on the top of a bus. I looked up with some anger and more agony and saw my friend on the cheerful countenance. Sorry, sir, he said. I know these boots are heavy. I know these are heavy boots. Got him because of my own feet get trod on so much, and now I'm treading on these on other people's. Treading on other people's. Hope I didn't hurt you, sir. He had hurt me, but he was so nice about it that I assured him he hadn't. So, even when you get hurt, like physically hurt by someone, somebody pushes you and says, oh, I'm so sorry, you feel better. And when someone just walks off and, doesn't even say sorry, you feel all the more hurt. But this person over here, wearing the boots, said sorry to the author who was not wearing heavy boots. Okay? But still, the author let go of the pain because the internal pain was healed because of the man saying, I'm sorry. Okay? After this, I began to observe him whenever I boarded his bus and found a curious pleasure in the constant good nature of his bearing. He seemed to have an inexhaustible fund of patience. Inexhaustible means never ending. Fund of patience means to wait, okay, have some patience, and a gift for making his passengers comfortable. Okay, I noticed that if it was raining, he would run up the stairs to give someone the tip that there was room inside. So he's trying to call someone in, inside the bus so that they don't get wet due to the heavy rains. With old people, he was so considerate as a son. Matlab means he was just as a son to them, caring, okay, considerate. And with children, as solicitous as a father. So, solicitous means to be kind and to be, father-like. Protective, solicitous as a father. He had evidently a peculiarly warm place in his heart for young people and always indulged in some merry jest with them. So just talking in a very happy manner, in a very merry manner. If he had a blind man on board, it wasn't enough to set him down safely on the pavement. He would call to Bill in front to wait while he took him across the road or round the corner. So not just leaving him off the bus was the only responsibility. He felt that he should call someone to walk the old man off the pavement and in a safe place. In short, I found that he irradiated such an atmosphere of good temper and kindliness that a journey with him was a lesson in natural courtesy and good manners. Matlab means someone had to learn from him to be so good just like him. He was so well mannered, he was so good to people, and it kind of irradiated means it kind of spread the happiness. His radiance, his good manners kind of spread the whole place and people could learn from him. What struck me particularly was the ease with which he got through his work. If bad manners were infectious, so are good manners. See, students, if bad manners can infect someone in a bad way, good manners can infect someone in a very good way. Okay, so both are infectious in their very own way. If we encounter incivility, most of us are apt to become incivil, but it is unusual, uncouth of a person who can be disagreeable with sunny people. I mean, it's very funny if someone is being kind or happy with you, you're being angry with them, and that's very unusual, okay, and it's very bad to do so. It is with manners as with the weather. Nothing clears up my spirits like a fine day, said Keats. Keats is another author and a poet. And a cheerful person descends on even the gloomiest of us with something of the benediction of a fine day. So it's a gloomy day and somebody blesses you. Benediction is to bless, okay? It's like a blessing. It's like to bless someone with your spirit and your happiness. It's a gloomy day, someone's having a bad day, and here you come with your happiness, your cheerfulness, and your good manners. It becomes a good day for people. And it sorry and so it was always fine weather on the polite conductor's bus, and his own and his own civility, his conciliatory address and good humored bearing infected his passengers. So his good humor, his being very courteous, it kind of infected the passengers as well. Even they started becoming happy. Enlightening their spirits, he lightened his own task. So when you work in a happy manner, you make your environment a happy place. So he was making his work more enjoyable and more happy. His gaiety was not a wasteful luxury, but a sound investment. Okay, I have missed him from my bus route of late, but I hope that only means that he has carried his sunshine, his good manners, to another road. His sunshine, his sunny personality, his really radiant personality to someone else. That's what the author hopes. It cannot be too widely diffused in a rather drab world, and I make no apologies for writing a panegyric on an unknown bus conductor. If Wordsworth could gather lessons of wisdom from the poor leech gatherer on the lonely moor, I see no reason why lesser people should not take lessons in conduct from one who shows how very modest calling may be dignified by good temper and kindly feeling. Okay? So he's trying to say that you can learn good manners from just about anyone. They may be a bus conductor, they may be a person of some rank, but if they are good, it really makes it worth it to learn something from them. It is a matter of general agreement that the war has had a chilling effect upon those very little everyday activities of behavior, everyday civilities of behavior that sweeten the general fare. We must get those civilities back if we are to make life kindly and tolerable for each other. If we want to tolerate each other, we have to tolerate each other in a kind manner, in a respectable manner, which is what will keep away a war. Wars can also start if people are being ill-mannered. Okay? We cannot get them back by invoking the law. So there is no need to say that there should be a law made on good behavior. No, it is your responsibility to practice good behavior. Okay? The policeman is a necessary symbol and the law is a necessary institution for a society that is still somewhat lower than the angels. But the law can only protect us against material attack. So he's trying to say that there is no need for law to get involved in good manners. Okay? Yes, it is necessary. Policemen, security, law, legal advices and legal matters are necessary to protect us from material attack. Okay? Like taking up of property and serious ones. But for these kind, you can at least, instill things on all by yourself. You can be mannered, well-mannered and good all by yourself. Okay? I suggested to him that nor will the liftman's way of meeting moral affront by physical violence help us to restore the civilities. He is trying to say that the liftman shouldn't have been violent, and so should you. You should not be violent. I suggest to him that he would have had a more subtle and effective revenge if he had treated the gentleman who would not say please with elaborate politeness. So he's trying to say that the liftman could have at least had, a sweeter way of getting back or having his revenge instead of hitting a person, which is wrong. He would have had the victory not only over the boor, means the rude, but over himself. and that he is the victor, and that is the victory that counts. So well manners, good manners is all the victory that counts. You're being well mannered even if a person over there is rude to you, but you are sticking to your manners, it shows that you are above them. Okay? The polite man may lose the material advantage, but he always has the spiritual victory. Okay? Internally, you still know that you are a good human being. I commend to the liftman a story of Chesterfield. In his time, the London streets were without the pavements of today, and the man who took the wall and the driest footing. I never give the wall to a scoundrel, said a man who met Chesterfield one day in the street. I always do, said Chesterfield, stepping with a bow into the road. I hope the liftman will agree that his revenge was much more sweet than if he had flung the fellow into the mud or clay. This is what he's trying to say, that there was a man, okay, he tried to say that I will never give my things to any scoundrel. I will never give my things to useless people. But the other man on the other end said, I would give everything. So he's trying to be polite, kind, and not materialistic. So he's trying to say, the author over here, lastly, is trying to say that good manners win everyone. They even win ourselves with good manners. Okay? So which is why good manners are so necessary. They may not be written under law. They may not be named under law. But that doesn't mean you don't practice them. You have to practice them. Okay? You have to be responsible of your manners, and you have to be good to people around you. Which is why, the journey of life becomes sweeter, and the engine of life is oiled constantly and it's running smoothly. Okay? So we will see you in the next class, and goodbye for now.